Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it, You Don't Need Fixing. What I mean by that? What we are in essence is perfect, whole, and complete. What we believe to be, which is a thought that says, I'm a separate individual, it's always trying to fix something wrong. Is always trying to achieve something, is trying to become better, perfect, or whatever. But what we're reminded here is that all we're dealing is how the mind translate every situation and always try to make it not good enough, not perfect, overlooking the fact that we simply are. We rest in that beingness, which doesn't need any fixing, which is already perfect, whole, and complete. Now, what happens is that when we begin to become conscious of this, it's not that things won't be done in the world of appearances that may need to improve things. It is that now the world of appearances is seen as a play that happens in me but not to me. In that sense, everything is perfect just as it is, because it's only giving me an opportunity to look at the conditioning, to look at the context of the mind. When the mind says this should be like this, and yet it is not being like this, it's an opportunity to realize that life is happening, and this idea that this should not be like this is not because life made a mistake. It's because I am superimposing upon life my idea of how life should be, because that idea, it serves to feed the seeming character I believe myself to be, which is again a thought. And the problem is that the thought always changes. Therefore, the character always changes. The needs of the character, the wants, and everything keeps changing. But all of that changes seems to be happening in the surface of a background which never changes. That background is what we're pointing to here always, and that is what is referred to as living with a mind that is not of this world. And that's how we experience the peace that passes all understanding. Does that mean that if something on the surface may appear fixing, that we should not do anything about it? This is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that when I never lose sight of what I am, which is the background, then I can even see in the play how the character is being moved or inspired to take appropriate action if necessary to deal with the seeming condition that takes place on the surface, but I am not disturbed, by whatever seemed to be happening, because I always know who I am. I'm going to give you an example. There is a difference between someone who's diagnosed with a terminal condition and someone who's having, let's say, the sniffles, or, a cold. See, the mind says, of course there's a difference. One is a very, one is a dangerous one, and the other one, it seems to be not dangerous at all. Well, the thing is that this is the perspective of a mind that identified with a character, thinking that one can be the extermination of the character, while the other one seems to not be any harm to the character. But you see, when you know who you are, then you see both as two seeming different appearances, but none of them can affect what you are in essence. Therefore, whether you have a cold or sniffles, or someone is being diagnosed with something that they call a terminal, it would make no difference, because there's no threat to who I am. There seems to be a threat to the body that I think I am, but there is never a threat to who I really am, When we rest in that awareness, then we realize that there's nothing to be fixed. Because awareness need not fixing. Consciousness, or that, whatever you want to call it, does not need any fixing. It's already perfect, whole, and complete. So we learn to live in the world with a mentality that is not of it. And that brings a sense of peace. It brings joy, because that joy cannot be perturbed. It's just simply a joy that expresses and infuses into everything that I do. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have painful experiences or pleasurable experiences. That is part of the dynamic of the duality of this seeming experience. But there's a background in which I rest, in which now I can become the observer, the witness of the change, of the movement, without being affected by it. You see? Because whenever we experience a particular situation, the mind with its interpretation is the root cause of the suffering. If a doctor says this person has only 2 weeks to live, well, someone who's identified with the character and with the mind conditioning begin to project all the possibilities, or on my family, and who am I going to leave behind, and I don't want to die, I want to stay, and all these kinds of thoughts that only pertain to the seeming character. But when you're resting in what you are, then you see that, okay, well, anyway, well, that's just what happens, and that's it. But I am not disturbed by that news, because it means nothing. When I go to bed at night, I disappear. I don't know if I'm going to wake up the next morning. That's what I wrote a whole chapter in one of the books. It's called The Gift of a Healing, or I mean the gift of an illness. Because every time when I go to bed, or the character, whatever you want to call it, go to bed at night, the mind that is identified with the individual disappears. Well, that's it. It just so happens that if I wake up the next morning, I see it as like the play is continuing on. That's all. And in the continuing on the play, I will have all the different experiences that the character may have to experience. The difference is that they won't be suffered, because there's no a desire to defend or to hold on to the identity. Even when I take care, or it seems as though life through these instruments takes care of it. It feeds them, what most people may consider healthy, if you want to call it that way. I exercise, but it's just part of my conditioning. It's not that I am better than or worse than anyone. It just so happens that that's something I like to do. To other people, they have a different conditioning. Some others, they just rather just have their beer and sit on the couch. Nothing wrong with that, because we're not comparing the characters. We're remembering that what we are is the underlying, presence. That's what we are always. When we never lose sight of that, then life is simply what is. You see? And what is there to fix? If I'm feeling bad, I need to fix my character because I need to feel better or good or whatever. Once again, I'm not saying that these things will not happen in the play. What I'm saying is that don't get identified or confused or distracted by the play. You see? This is where this is pointing to. The play may appear that everything needs to be fixing or fixed, but the space in which the play may seem to appear needs no fixing, doesn't need to be fixed. That's where I'm pointing to. That's what I mean when I say you don't need to be fixed. You don't need any fixing. You are perfect, whole, and complete. If the mind is identified with a character, of course it appears that I have to do all sorts of things to improve it. When the mind is identified with itself as the self, then instead of seeing what needs to be improved, it just enjoy the play without being distracted by it. Enjoys the ups and the downs, because none of that has any effect on it. And you are it, you see? So the way we put this into practice in every video, and we'll do it again, is very simple. Right now, if you don't identify with any thoughts, I didn't say the thoughts will not be there. Their thoughts that's part of the play. Even if you're feeling any particular bodily sensation, if you don't identify with the thought that is trying to interpret the body sensation, and the body sensation simply is. Even if you have news from a doctor that says this is whatever, it doesn't matter, or from your boss or from your family, it doesn't matter. These are just thoughts that are trying to somehow take your attention away from from the experience of being, you see. So, and even if it's a thought of this vacation I'm going to have, I'm excited about. I'm not saying that this cannot be enjoyed. I'm simply saying that these are thoughts. If you buy the good ones, you're going to have to buy the bad ones as well. So we're pointing here that what is simply is. If you rest in that isness, you can see the thoughts, you can see this, or you can experience the sensations, but none of that has any effect on you, on what you are in essence, which need not to be fixed. You see? So as you rest, or as resting in beingness happens, because it's the nature of our being, without being identified with the content of the mind, interestingly enough, you will notice how the character is moved to take appropriate actions if necessary. If there's a pain that needs to be addressed, then you may find yourself taking something, or maybe going to a doctor, or just watching it for a while to see what happens. I don't know. But whether you go to a doctor or watch it what happens, or whatever, or take something, you see it as an action that is taking place, but that has no effect on what you are in essence. You're not taking the pill because of fear of what happened. You're not going to the doctor because of fear or worry of what happened, you know. You simply see that life is moving you in those directions, and you can enjoy the whole process. You can enjoy the pain. I'm not saying in a masochistic way. I'm saying that you simply observe it like, woof, this is a very interesting and intense experience, but does not have any effect on your well-being, meaning that doesn't have any effect on your psychological well-being. You see it as just what it is, and you know that if life wants you to be here, you'll be here, and if life doesn't want you to be here, you won't be here. You see, but what difference does it make when you are life itself? So in a way, you are alive always. You are alive in every sense of the word, in every, that's what you are. When you identify with a thought, character, person, individual, that's when fear comes in. I am separate from life, so I have to make sure that I strive for what I need, or what I want, even not even what I want, but even what I need, you know, as if life does not provide for itself. I find myself competing against other, and of course I find myself always fixing this seeming character to somehow meet the expectations of the world of appearances, to meet the expectations of the people that I relate with, or even to meet the expectations that I have placed on myself. You see? And it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be good enough, because there's a sense of incompleteness that we experience just by identifying with a character. And we don't understand why we feel that way. That's the frustrating part, that we try to, we chase life, you know, we're taught to chase everything, to pursue things so we can feel complete. Once I have the relationship, I'll experience the love that I was looking for. Once I have enough money, I'll experience the abundance or the security that I think that I was experiencing or looking for. When the body looks in a particular way, I'll be looked, you know, and I'll be liked and approved. When I have a particular status in life, then I will receive the approval of the world. And I keep fixing something, and then when I get all this stuff, there's a sense of incompleteness. And then what the mind says, oh, is because that was not enough. You see, $1 million was not enough. You need the 2 million. You see this, and then you get the 2, and no, you need the 3, and then eventually now you need to be a billionaire, and it's never enough, you know. And then if the relationship doesn't satisfy you enough, then you need to somehow do something to spice it up, to see if it can give you whatever you think is lacking. And that, unfortunately, is a never-ending battle, when all you need to do is simply relax in what you are. And the thing is that when you know what you are, when the sense of lack is removed, then you can enjoy all those things. If life wants you to have a relationship, you can enjoy the relationship, because you're not trying to derive anything from it. If anything, you're just bringing something to it. If life presents you with money, or whatever the case may be, you don't see it as your source. You don't try to hoard it. You don't try to derive a sense of identity from it. You see it at, okay, well, it seems as though now I can eat in any restaurant I want to. That's it. And it's not you're going to go to every restaurant to eat. It's just a way of saying, if you happen to have a health that, or a body that, you know, according to many people's standards look fit, then that's fine. You just enjoy it, but you don't make anything special of it. You see? If you have a career that you enjoy, something that you love, that's fine. You enjoy the career, but again, you don't see yourself as better than, you know. You simply see as that's what's happening, but none of that has any effect on what you are, because you recognize the completeness that you are. Consequently, whether anything of the world of experiences changes, because life always changes, it does not affect the peace, that happiness that you are, and you know that there's nothing to be fixed because you know who you are. This is what these videos are pointing to the simplicity of knowing that I am, in spite of all the changes that seems to be taking place in the world of appearances. Everything in the world changes, everything in the appearance changes, feelings, sensations, circumstances, but what I am does not. See? And that's what we're pointing to. So again, if you rest right now without identifying with any thoughts, you don't notice anything, but it's a way of saying what is left is what is. See? And that isness is what you are always. That isness does not need any fixing. It just needs to be acknowledged. And well, that was the inspiration that came through this instrument. I hope it served, and as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.